What's up everybody, it's Henry here, and in this video, I'm going to be doing a live, yes live, one-on-one coaching session with one of my brand new coaching students, Luca. He's making over $10,000 a month, and I'm going to give him all the tools, insights, and strategies to scale it to well over $500,000. Check the video out. What's up everybody, Henry here. In this video, we're going to be doing a deep dive into one of our amazing coaching students, Luca, and everything that's going on about his business, and obviously this time you're going to see, we're doing it live, in person, and not over Zoom. So stay tuned, this is going to be a fun one. So, Luca, thank you so much for joining me. I appreciate it. It's going to be a lot of fun. So, first and foremost, I want you to introduce everyone to the following. Give us like a 60-second synopsis of what you're all about.
Let's do it. Hey guys, so I'm Luca. I'm a realtor here in New Jersey. I work a lot in the Union County area of New Jersey. I've been doing this for around 6-7 years now. I started as an intern to a broker, and I was able to grow from there and kind of learn the roots, because get into this business very hard, especially in today's market. I've been doing this for like 6 years, and I was able to get his experience and able to carry it on to my real estate career.
So then over the last 12 months, how many deals have you closed, and what do you feel like you're on track to do for this year?
I've been 20 deals so far. I'm shooting for 30. You gotta shoot high, sure, and hopefully get that number, beat the last year's.
Awesome.
Much.
So and then what's like your average price point right now?
Right now we're at the 450s, 500s.
Okay, cool. So then just for number's sake and everything we'll talk about, we'll use a 500 number.
Okay.
All right. So I know we're going to be talking about a couple different topics like we previously were chatting about before we jumped on the camera. So first and foremost, we're talking about lead gen, a point that you feel like is either your biggest challenge or biggest obstacle in the business.
I think right now will probably be the cold calling. It's like for a lot of agents it's super hard, and especially for me, I've been trying before you and it's not been working out. A lot of rejections, but I think if I ever get that down, you'll be able to scale this to like the moon pretty much.
Sure. So then, and again, just to clarify, so again, you closed 20 deals this year, which is awesome. Congrats to that. That's awesome. On the seller side, we're talking about like 50% of your business is buyers, 50% of your business is sellers. 100% or nearly 100% of your business on the seller side has been referral business.
Correct.
Okay, cool. So we're talking about cold calling just specifically for sellers because, I don't know, I know you've been watching me for a long time. Like, I'm a huge fan of only prospecting and only marketing for seller leads.
Right.
Right? Because I feel like buyer leads just come when you prospect for sellers. Okay, so when I talk about cold calling, we're only going to be talking about seller leads. So when it comes to any type of cold calling, what have you done, what hasn't worked, and if you've done nothing, that's fine, we can just kind of talk on that.
Right, so the majority of my prospecting has been circle prospect. I know that's your favorite as well. I've been getting not really far just because I know my script and my confidence and what I'm doing is not there yet. But I do know that that's the best return in the aspect of long term, since FSBOs expires, you get 100 people calling them daily, and for the circle prospecting is just getting the right one and just keep following them. So yeah. I think circle prospecting is definitely where I want to be at.
So a couple things that we're going to focus on when it comes to, I would say, cold calling and let's just say lead generation in general.
Yeah.
Okay. When you're doing 20, 30 deals at a 500 price point, you're talking about 15 million or so in volume, right? You're making a few $100,000, which is awesome. And the way to get you, which again, your goal in the next 12 months is to hit what number?
500 is the money one.
Awesome. So $500,000. So in order for you to go from where you're at right now, which is that's not a drastic difference, by the way. It might feel drastic in your head, but it's not a drastic difference. And there's going to be a couple key things we're going to talk about today that are going to get you there virtually no problem. Obviously, the economy is something we'll touch on as well.
Right. Yeah.
But just overall operations, logistics-wise, there's a few key changes we're going to make. So let's just talk about lead gen as a whole. Cold calling is one of those aspects. I believe circle prospecting, like you're doing, is smart. However, making sure that you're prospecting in a key area that not only where you have a couple of clients right now that you know are looking, but also in prospecting in areas that are 50% or more than your current price point. So the reason why I say this is twofold. So again, if your average price right now is $450 to $500, and you start prospecting areas that are between $700 and $1 million, that basically means that if you could start closing a deal at call it $800, $900, closer to the $1 million range when you're at some of these average price points. I know we're talking about some price points. So if you're at like 400 versus an 800, now you're doing 2-for-1s.
Right.
So that means every one sale you get is like closing 2 homes like you're doing currently.
Right.
So I'm trying to inch your price point up a little bit because that'll inch your commissions up a little bit.
Right.
Okay. So again, like my intention is not to make you work harder so that you lose all your time. Just work smarter so you can keep your time and make more money.
Makes sense. Okay.
So when you are circle prospecting, the rules of thumbs are just increase your price points. Don't ever prospect in less than 500. I would even say less than 700 would be silly.
Okay.
Okay. The higher price points, the better. And then the ideal again is that if you have clientele that are already looking, those are the first towns the first neighborhoods you should always be prospecting. Right. Second thing is that when you're at your level that you're at right now, cold calling is definitely something I would recommend doing partially. If I'm you in your shoes, I'd spend probably 1 to 2 hours cold calling. Okay. 1 to maybe 2 hours doing follow-up on all your leads, because you probably have a lot of leads that you've generated over some time. But the most important thing that I would focus on is building more relationships, because if you've closed 10 deals this year so far, just on seller sides of all referrals, the point is that like if you've closed 10, that means next year you have 10 plus, possibly another 10 that you could do.
Right.
Does that make sense? Because like each one of those 10 closings could equal another deal next year. Who has referred you of those 10 people right now? Like those 10 closings? Who has referred you the most of those closings? So is there any past client that sticks out to you that's giving you the most business?
Yeah, there's two actually, constantly every 3 months.
So I would literally find a way, like I was just working with somebody, a very close person, family to me, right, about helping her build her business. And we were talking about there's a difference between being a realtor who's friendly and being a friend who happens to be a realtor. It's being that separation, which is an entirely different thing but sounds so similar. When you can bridge that gap, that's where magic happens when it comes to referrals. Right, like my best referral partners, I'm best friends with. So now if they're referring you one person a quarter, typically they'll increase the amount of referrals they give you, and it's like, they don't even think about it. Like it's just, of course I'm helping my best friend. I would double down on the people that are already doing it, and I would start working on bigger, better relationships in the sense of professional partners. Such as, I'm not just saying your lender, your title, your attorney, I'm saying more so like, if you could choose any niche period, what would you want to focus on?
Investing.
Okay, investors. Okay, cool. All right, so in that world, you need to know probably a couple more investors that you can work with, and then continuously not just focus on, because like listen, there's a massive income difference on somebody who works with investors who just does single families versus somebody who does single family, multifamily, mixed use, commercial, everything. There's a massive difference in income. And mastering and understanding and taking the next 1, 2, 3 years to know that like if you want to shift that on the investor side and make a lot more money to not necessarily work a ton more, but just have a bigger scope of product to offer them, it takes a little bit more of an education. So, and again, like how I understand, to go from where you're at right now to making 500 or $1 million is not drastically different, but on the lead gen side, those are the slight shifts you're gonna have to start making.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
100%.
Any more questions on the lead gen side?
I know.
Okay, cool. So, and I would definitely say for somebody of your caliber, when again, you're already making over 6 figures, you need to be spending more time on follow-up than you're doing on lead gen.
Right, I've been noticing that lately, that it's like the majority of the day it's just following up.
That's all it is. And that's okay. And like if you know what's interesting? It's funny where like if your day starts to become mundane and the same every day, that's actually okay. That's actually a good thing. Where it kind of seems the same, that's okay. Like the boring, mundane, same stuff is what will make you successful. It doesn't need to look fun, fancy, or different. So just know that like that doesn't mean you're not growing.
Okay. Yeah, I was kind of worried because it's like following up every day, and then it kind of goes into my feet, like calling, and then it feels like, you know, going backwards, but, you know, definitely.
Yeah, like again, if you are growing by the amount of leads you have, like if you're every day you're getting more leads, call it 1 to 3 leads a day.
Yeah.
Somewhere in that ballpark, okay? And obviously you're getting a referral a day is way more valuable than a cold lead a day.
Right.
Okay? And I'm just talking sellers, by the way. If you're doing 1 to 3 leads a day, you're having 1, 2 like coffee meetings, even if it's just a phone call with just a professional partner, someone you're building a deeper relationship with, or meeting with one of your past clients or professional partners to deepen that relationship.
Right.
Dude, you're moving in the right direction. Obviously, if you're not setting any appointments every single day, that's a problem. But that's only going to happen because you're not doing your follow-up. So that's on lead gen. And then the piece that's going to also take your lead gen to a whole nother level is going to be in the fact of, I want to skip to support. Because I know we've talked about having an assistant. At your level, you have a choice. But if you want to grow, you need to hire. It's like, it's not a negotiable thing. This is the funny thing that I always see people do when they start making 100, 200 in that realm. And what happens is they get stuck because they don't hire. Because they go, well, mentally, they're like, well, I know how to do it. Maybe I don't trust somebody else to do it as good as me. Right? And if I have to pay somebody else to do it, I might as well pay myself to do it. And here's the thing. The reality is, there are people out there who will do a better job than you. The reality is that you actually are not worth $20 an hour, because that's what the job is worth. So you're actually paying yourself $20 an hour to save what is thousands of dollars an hour. I recommend that this is what I typically suggest. You can have 2 options. One of which is the first option I'm going to recommend. Second option you can do. First option is you find somebody that you can hire at a per transaction basis. It's probably the smartest, easiest way to dip your toes into the water of having support staff without having them full time. That person will take care of 100% of your listings and 100% of the transaction coordination. And maybe they'll help you coordinate photos, they'll help you coordinate signs and lockboxes. Okay? And listen, I pay our runner $25, $50 an hour, whatever, to put up a sign in a lockbox. It's not worth your time to go drive 20 to 30 or 40 minutes. Pay somebody $20 or $50 or $100 to go do it for you, so you can spend the extra 30 minutes building relationships.
Right, that makes complete sense.
Way more valuable.
Yeah.
Okay? Don't get me wrong, it's on your way home, sure. But like, I'm not here to split dollars, but like, you have to start thinking, you are not worth $20 an hour anymore.
Right.
and anything that's less than that, you are paying to do it for you.
Yeah, 100%.
Right? Transaction coordination.
Yeah.
Okay, so like definitely hire somebody at a per transaction basis. I pay somewhere around 1,000, but she does way more than just, and she runs a team of
Right,
people
yeah,
at this
everybody.
point, right?
Gotcha.
And like she has like a separate people for listings, separate people for transaction coordination. They do all my COs, they do like everything. So I pay 1,000, but it comes with everything. If they're not handling everything for you per transaction, I probably somewhere between 300 and 600. And for the people watching,
Yeah.
I understand. What people will often do is they say, "Wow, you're paying 1,000. That's way too much money. My person's paying 300." You know, my average commission is like 30 to 60,000 bucks, depending on the type of business I'm doing, right? So it's like I don't really give a shit about paying 1,000 bucks, right? That doesn't affect me.
Yeah.
And if it's like if your average commission is like $600, then pay $200. Like pay as little as you can,
Right.
right? But again, like and your average price point, you're probably your commission somewhere between 8 and 12.
Yeah.
Somewhere in that ballpark.
Yeah.
So again, like that being said, don't be afraid to spend 500, 600, 700 bucks because that gives you all of your time back.
Okay. I've been noticing doing administrative work, putting in paperwork. It's just for what?
Not your job. I want you to go ew from now on. Like it's a mental ew. Like I don't touch that. It's like it's disgusting to me. I don't want to touch paperwork. I don't want to do paperwork. I don't want to like it's not. Like imagine if like you basically are going to be paying somewhere around the ballpark of 15 to 25 an hour for it.
Yeah.
But think about it mentally being $5 an hour work. Again, if I said, hey, want to take out my trash, I'll pay $5 an hour for it.
Right.
Dude, you weigh more. Like you're not worth that,
100%.
right? I'm not diminishing the work, but you're just like that's not what you're worth, right? So like just you have the self worth now of like a few $100s per hour.
Gotcha.
But if you're doing work that is not a few $100s per hour, you're valuing yourself less than what you're worth.
Right. It's just like a mental switch kind of.
100%. And if you want to get to 500 plus, you have to hire. It's impossible not to hire. You get trapped in the 200 to 300 range. Yeah, your margins are stupid and like you have no overhead, but like you're stunting growth for nothing.
Right. No, I get that.
And honestly, like, the best part about paying per transaction is that you don't pay unless you make money, which is the best thing in the world.
Yeah.
Okay? However, let's say the second option is you hire somebody full-time or part-time.
Okay.
So you hire somebody at 15 to 20, $25 an hour, they only work 20 hours a week. They do all the same tasks, but there might be other people who are like, hey, I actually want the person to be a little bit more hands-on in my business.
Okay.
They want to have them more just work for you. You want them to have, maybe some other tasks around the office, order supplies, do your marketing maybe, take some photos of you, blah, blah, blah. Okay? So 2 levels of it. Again, like I like the per transaction basis because I don't need somebody in my office. I work virtually. I travel too much for me to have a full-time person in my office. So they all work remote. I have a team, everyone 100% works remote.
Okay.
So those are the 2 options I recommend. And I want you to understand that I'd say that you should hire somebody tomorrow. Like that's how much of an urgency it is if you really want to hit 500 by next year. Because it's going to take them 60, 90 days to really understand your processes. And obviously I'll walk you through the steps of like the hiring and the process and all that kind of stuff. And just know that like it's actually a lot easier than you're realizing.
Okay.
And having that support will completely change the way you do business. Like my income went from 134 to 600 in a year from just hiring somebody.
Right, just actual help.
That's it. Just because it allowed me to spend 100% of my time, or nearly 100, to just focus on sales. But I want you to understand, like, you don't need anything else except for focus on the lead gen we just talked about.
Yeah.
And one support staff to take a lot of that stuff off your plate to go to the numbers you're looking to go. The only middle ground we're going to talk about, which is, we'll talk about the market for a second.
Yeah.
And then the only other thing that I want to talk about and really stress with you, and I've talked about it 100 times on my channel, is that if you're not increasing your price points, you're going to succumb to what happened to me, which is that you're going to have to sell 100 plus homes a year to make $1 million a year. Which I'm not saying you can't do, I'm just saying it's a lot of work.
Right.
And I don't recommend it. I recommend just getting your price point so high that you can sell the least amount of properties to make great money.
Right, work smart.
Yeah. And also just know that once you start netting somewhere between 300 and 700, somewhere in that realm, there's going to be something that goes off in your head and you're going to live a different life. Because you're going to have such a high net income and you're going to be able to net so much money because you really don't need any more support. That one support staff, maybe it turns into 2 people that kind of work cohesively together. So it's like you're basically having no out of pocket unless you make money. You're going to be taking home somewhere between $30,000 and $60,000 a month. It gets insane.
Right.
If you live a different life, you're making like doctor money. All I'm saying is that like sometimes going to $1 million plus adds more stress than it does positivity. Yeah. So we'll have that conversation when you're there, but just know like that's just a conversation you get to have with yourself.
Right, I get it.
Just because like it just sometimes is such a hindrance on life because there's only a few other ways to go to $1 million plus.
Right.
And sometimes if you're just smart with your money, you can sock away some great money. In a few short years, you're a multi-millionaire anyways.
Right.
So what I'm saying is that like you get to have different choices at that
Right.
point. Okay, but the next 12 to 24 months is just getting you past that 500 point.
Gotcha.
Okay. And then when it comes to, so again, we talk about raising your price points. And then the only other thing that I really recommend is it's completely focused on and based on that money will be based on the relationships you have. So if you're like, hey, why am I not making more money? check the amount of very close relationships you have of high caliber people, because it's not just the amount of investors you're working with, because everyone in the world tells you they're an investor, but it's the quality of that client and your ability to find great deals. Because if those two things are going to be the reason why you make 500 or more a year, or less than 500 a year. That's literally it, right? On top of the fact that the great job you're already doing, which is like, don't take your eye off the ball right now, of like the wonderful job you're doing in the regular resi place.
Just like add it on.
Add it on, correct.
Okay.
Yep, that type of stuff of finding off market deals and all that kind of stuff is, besides the calling part of it, but like that gets done after hour time. Like, it's not done while you could be making calls.
Right.
Because what ends up happening is that somebody like yourself, or a lot of the people watching my content, because I've seen this happen in real time, where they're on their track to make 100, 200 a year, and then they hear like, oh, they want to work with investors, and then they start stopping what got them there to do this, and now you're starting from zero again.
Right.
I'm like, no, it's an and.
Right.
It's not an or.
Gotcha.
Okay? So just pay attention to that part. So then let's talk about the market. What are you seeing in the market?
This September, it changed a little bit in my opinion, because it slowed down for quite a bit, maybe since after May it slowed down, and then now September I'm seeing the things getting kicked up again a little bit. The economy seems to be getting a little better. I just feel like we're going back to the 2008, 2007, when properties were in the market a month or two, and then you got 10,000, 20,000 under market value. But now with the rates coming in a little higher than past yesterday, it's like a lot of uncertainties that are going on.
Yep.
And you get a lot of people talking, but at the end of the day, it's what's going to happen, nobody knows. I was seeing a correlation for the past few years, but now it's kind of faded away in my perspective.
Yeah.
So it's kind of want to see like where you saw it from.
Sure. So I feel like over the last 2 years, we've created this mentality, or especially when some of the people who've only been in the business for 2 or 3 years,
Right, yes.
right? Like they've created this mentality that like this is how things will be forever, or that this
Right.
is normal.
Yeah.
It's not. It's a completely abnormal market that we've seen in the last 24 months. So we're going back to normality,
Exactly.
right? So like obviously you've been in the business for 6, 7 years, right? So like, and it's like we need to go back to your mentality of the 2017, 2018, 2019
Exactly.
world,
Yeah.
and knowing like that actually is the normality that we should be used to. The last 24 months, if you had a pulse, right, and
Right.
had a license, you made decent money. And beforehand, it wasn't that simple,
Exactly.
right? Getting back to the basics. Stick to what works. This is not a time to get fancy. This is not a time to go out and hire a bunch of realtors that are going to go do things for you and all that kind of stuff and build a massive team.
Right.
This is a time to get lean and mean and stick to the basics. The basics are what?
Just lead generation, follow up, building relationships. That's it, right?
That's it. Like the simple stuff works.
Right.
The simple stuff scales. When people see what happened over the last 24 months and they go, this is going to be the reality going forward, and they build these crazy huge teams, all based off cold leads, which makes no sense.
Right.
That's not sustainable. And you see it now all of a sudden having problems.
Yes, a lot. I see it a lot everywhere.
Exactly, because that's not sustainable.
Right.
So that's why, like again, I don't get fancy. I've gotten fancy in the past, and guess what? I got burned.
Right.
And I just learned that like, stick to what works. Get really good at it and raise your price points. It's not going to be complicated.
Work smart, not hard. Right?
That's it. That's it.
Mhm.
Right. And just know, like, listen, over the next, call it 6 months, 12 months, 24 months, listen, is there going to be an adjustment? Probably. No one in the world knows. All I can tell you is block out all the noise. Everything you've been hearing about the market, the short answer is nobody actually knows. Nobody actually knows that the market's going to drop 10, 20, 30, 40, 50% or whatever. They're fear bombing everybody on the news. Nobody actually knows. And all I can say is stick to what works. And know that like no matter what happens going forward, even if it was another COVID-like event, 2008 event, which took housing prices down 30, 40, 50% in some areas, guess what? It will come back and then some, because it always does. It's just staying in the business long enough to see that happen, right? So, and just again, sticking to what works through those periods of time. I'm so outside of the bubble of what everyone thinks is going to happen because I don't care. Because I have no control over it.
Right.
But what I do have control over is doing my lead gen, my follow-up,
Right.
and building more relationships. And that's it. And like here, and this will be the last thing I'll say, just to kind of wrap up things here. For those of you who think that something is going to happen, I definitely think about preparing for the worst and obviously hoping for the best. So if we are going to quote unquote prepare for the worst, what would you think you should do?
Yeah, so I watched a lot of past videos and I cut down all my expenses. Like if it's not business related, I'm not spending money on that. And it's all the big bills I have personally is my rent, and that's about it. Because like you said, if my money drops 50% less last year, and I'm increasing my purchase price, I'm still gonna be able to sustain myself by working half. So that's kind of like the direction I'm going. So
Exactly.
it has to work out. You have to kind of cut down your expenses.
Look, you are living proof of what you should be doing. Just understand, you're doing all the right things. And again, I hope you guys are listening. Like again, cutting your expenses and assuming that hypothetically next year you might do half the business you did this year.
Right.
You might.
Mm-hmm.
I might.
Yeah.
And at the same time, if we want to continue making more money, or at least the same or as close to the same as possible, the only part we can tweak is our price point.
Right.
You know, as agents, it's not overly complicated how we're paid. It's either you increase your production or you increase your price point, in which it drastically affects your commission, right? So like those two levers are all you got.
Right.
So it's like, okay, well, we only can play with one or the other, and if this one's getting cut in half, then we have to play the other role. So I agree. Like, listen, cutting your bills in half, which is, or as much as you have, is brilliant, and just saving as much money as possible, and knowing that like investing in this very moment, unless it's the greatest thing since sliced bread, which, listen, those deals are out there.
Yeah.
Those opportunities are out there. I'm not telling you not to do them if they are, but I would be really cautious.
Right.
I'm not saying I know any, like, other than fairly decent in real estate investments, right? Like, because I know real estate investments.
Yeah.
Other than that, I'm not someone who's going to say you should invest in stocks right now or crypto or anything like that.
Right.
I don't know that world,
Exactly.
right? So just be like, this is just time to be cautious.
Yeah.
You know, until things kind of somewhat level out, or you're in a cash position where you don't care anymore, which is all. That's
the goal.
That's the goal, exactly. So anything to get clarification on anything that we kind of talked about. So and don't.
No, I mean you kind of hit on everything I was kind of like wanted to speak to you about, and a lot of not a lot of uncertainties, a few uncertainties I had here and there, but definitely coming from somebody that's been there and done it, it gets you a lot more confident in kind of where I'm heading to.
Yeah. Well, look, you know, stay on the right path. Keep making those slight adjustments because you're doing all the right things, and just know that like, don't stop doing what got you here.
Right. That's kind of.
That's the big thing. So look, what made you feel like signing up for the coaching program was something you just had to do?
Prior to signing up, I came out of like being depressed for a while, and I went to therapy, and then that helped a little bit. But I knew that my main issue to kind of improve myself was kind of get my business all wrapped up. And when you have a foggy brain, a foggy mind, it's hard to kind of get there. I've been watching you for a while. It's funny, you actually contacted me through Instagram. That's kind of like the reason I was like, okay, this guy's a little different. And I watched your videos, your cold covers are great. And that's when I contacted you, and it's kind of like, it helped me I had everything all over the place, helped me put everything into like one direction. And that's kind of like the biggest benefit I've got from our signing up.
I love that. Well, look, I'm excited to have you on board, and I'm excited to see where we take it. Well, listen, I'm proud of you. Keep it up, and thank you for being on the show. I appreciate it.
Thank
This
you
is
for
awesome.
having me.
Of course, this is great. So listen, guys, what you just watched was an awesome session with one of my amazing coaching students, Luca. Listen, re-watch this over and over again because, again, the simple stuff works, guys. There's not anything you need to do to get really fancy because fancy doesn't scale. And again, if you want to go from making what you're making right now to a few hundred, if not your first million, you need to just stick to what works. Because what has gotten you there in this industry is actually a fascinating thing. Should and will, as long as you do the right delegations and you focus on the right things, will get you there. Anyways, I hope you guys appreciate this video. I loved it, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Take care.